Welcome to the Irish Baptist College podcast, Let's Talk. This episode is part of a short series answering 4 questions. This idea came from some blog posts that I wrote for Grace Publications. And what we're going to do is sit down together and discuss these questions. I'm your host, Davey Ellison. I'm the Director of Training and Old Testament Lecturer here at the Irish Baptist College. And with me for this question in particular is Dr. David Luke, our Postgraduate Director, and I get this wrong every time, Historical Theology Tutor. Is that right? Lecturer,
that's the one.
lecturer
That's the one.
in Historical
You've
Theology.
got it. You've got it for
Good.
once. Yeah.
Got it for once. Excellent. How's your week been so far?
Yeah, it's been a fairly good week. My main employ at the moment is I'm helping my younger daughter move house. So I've been recovering a few lost DIY skills, and and as ever, when I help my children, I've been having an IKEA disaster. So you have to have an IKEA disaster when you're doing a bit of DIY.
What was the IKEA disaster? Was it a Billy bookcase?
No, it wasn't. Although I'm not sure there's much difference between a Billy bookcase and this particular type of wardrobe. Which whenever
a Billy bookcase without shelves.
Yeah, it was a bit like that. And at the point where it said lift it off the ground, we lifted it off the ground and it collapsed.
Oh.
Despite having followed the instructions as Ted Hastings might have said to the letter of the law, it still collapsed. That was a bit of a disaster. And then there was a second set of instructions that said if it doesn't work, try it this way. But the damage had been done by that stage.
So is it standing now, or is it returned?
It is in the process of being replaced. But we now have a foolproof method of constructing it.
Okay.
My other great success this week, and
with more than one.
I would like to pay tribute to the power and reach of this podcast.
Wow.
The last time I was on it, I mentioned a book that had gone missing that I owned.
Has it returned?
And it has returned.
Oh, wow.
It has returned. It returned just this week, as I opened a drawer at home and found it there. You were
the guilty party?
Yeah, I was a guilty party all along. So while I would like to pay tribute to the power and reach of the podcast, it actually had nothing to do with it. But I'm sure listeners have been on tenterhooks, wondering if the book ever turned up. It did just this week.
Okay, very good. That was quite a letdown. I thought somebody was going to have shipped it from Canada or something, but
no, nothing so glamorous.
Well, at least it's found. That's the important bit. So, question today, which is why we have our postgraduate director with us, is how does postgraduate study serve the local church? So I think there's probably in some senses, I think this is right, but this kind of thought, postgraduate study, ivory tower academics, people not living in the real world, but in a dusty library somewhere. But theological colleges like ourselves, practical theological colleges, have postgraduate programs, and we do so because we think they're beneficial for people in ministry. So the question today is, how does postgraduate study serve the local church? In what way does it make an impact in the local church? So I've come with a few answers. I think you've come with a few answers. We'll let you crack on first.
Okay. Yeah, this is something I wrestled with when I undertook postgraduate study myself a number of years ago. Yeah. And the question, I suppose, in my mind was, someone who was serving at that time as a full-time pastor, did a postgraduate study distract from the work of the work of the local church? So it was something I wrestled with, and my supervisor at the time, I pitched this to him, and he said, "You must remember that when you're doing theology, you're doing it for the church." Yeah. And I think that's something that has stuck with me ever since. That we can sometimes, you say, have this kind of binary way of thinking. That it's either for the church or it's for the academy. Yeah. But you can actually do theology for the sake of the church. And I think historically that has been the case, that people largely haven't had this division in their mind, that in the past people have thought about doing theology for the sake of the church. Yeah. So that there's something inherently good I think about pastors and other people involved in ministry studying theology and developing theology. So I think that's quite an important idea.
Yeah.
And maybe we need more today of a recovery of the idea of the pastor theologian.
Okay.
You know, that a key part of pastoral ministry is learning to think theologically and to work certain issues through. So I think at that level, as we study further in theology, there is a benefit to the local church from a purely kind of, if you like, theological standpoint. I came across this quotation from Richard Lovelace's famous book, The Dynamics of Spiritual Life, and he refers to those who have made the greatest impact on the church since the Reformation, and he says of them, they were trained theologians who combined spiritual urgency with profound learning, men who had mastered the culture of their time and were in command of the instruments needed to destroy its idols and subdue its innovations. And many of these men influenced, of course, not only their own generation, but influenced down to the present day. Yeah. So there's something I think in that idea of the recovery of the idea of the kind of pastoral theologian, the person who sees that work of theology as part of their pastoral responsibility, their pastoral duty. Yeah. So I think that's at least part of the answer. I think also another way that it benefits the church is that it helps to develop the theological understanding and skills of those involved in ministry. I sometimes think, you know, when a student leaves here after undergraduate study, our course is called Preparation for Ministry, and we like to think they've been well prepared, but they certainly haven't been exhaustively prepared.
No, definitely not.
And I think we have a sense that we send them out with a toolbox. And one of the things that I think postgraduate study does is it helps them then enlarge that toolbox. So I think it helps them to develop. And interestingly, I think what sometimes happens is that we see undergraduate students who immediately they finish their studies here say, well, I then want to go on to postgraduate study. So they recognize the value in keeping that going and developing that. And I think that's good. So I think we're helping those who are engaged in ministry or about to be engaged in ministry to continue to develop and grow in their theological skill set, if I can use that terminology. The other group who tend to come to us, I think, are people involved in ministry who want that opportunity again to develop theologically, but also that opportunity, I think, to reflect on the practice they have been engaged in. And again, I think postgraduate study allows people that opportunity to step back and reflect on the ministry they're engaged in. So for example, in our preaching module, students have an opportunity to preach and get feedback and reflect on their experience of preaching and feedback, and to connect that then with the theories of preaching. So that type of way of reflective learning, I think, is very valuable for students who are already involved in ministry. So that's another kind of way, I think, in which it helps to support the local church. So I think those are a couple of ways
that's really helpful.
It's valuable, for the local church.
That's kind of a broader, higher vision. I've gone a little bit more detail and practical.
Okay,
but I think that's really helpful. Is it fair for me to try to summarize what you said there? Is kind of you're trying to give people space to continue to develop and enhance their theological thinking, or at least church leaders to do that, and that in consequence then benefits the church if you've better equipped.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it helps leaders develop because leaders are busy. You know, I always say to our no students, nobody's taking on the postgraduate course because they're not busy enough. So
They need to fill their calendar.
yeah. So, I've so little to do. I need something to fill it. So again, naturally, if you like, in a sense, people don't have the same space. To stop and think and reflect.
Yeah, that's true.
So this allows them to do that, but it also gives them the structure to do that. Students will sometimes come and they're uncertain. Should I do this? Should I not do this? And sometimes they could. Well, of course I could do it on my own. And to which my response is, well, why haven't you done it on your own so far? So this actually provides a kind of a disciplined structure for people to do that. Otherwise, it may simply remain a kind of a pipe dream. This is something I may or may not do. But as John Stott used to talk about, there's the tyranny of the urgent, and we all know what the reality of that in ministry life. So this, in a sense, forces you to stop and discipline yourself to do things that you might otherwise simply aspire to.
Yeah. And I think one of the payoffs then that the local church experiences or should experience, I hope you're going to agree with this. You're only after marking some master's essays, so you might disagree with me. But I think one of the benefits is that it forces the individuals to be more careful students in terms of how they conduct their research, how they assess sources, and then how they compile an answer to certain questions. And I think sometimes the fear in a local church is if my pastor goes and does a master's, well, then we're going to get these diatribes about the Hebrew and the Greek on Sundays, and in the midweek meeting we'll be learning Latin to read all this stuff. But actually, the benefit of postgraduate studies should be felt in the clarity which a well-trained pastor can achieve when teaching, and those skills are developed through postgraduate study. The reflective aspect that you've talked about, the opportunity to rub shoulders with others and learn from their experience, and just that structured environment in which to maybe not learn for the first time, but continue to develop those study instincts that then become beneficial in a teaching ministry in a local church. Is that a fair way to think about it?
I think that is a helpful way. One of the quotations I often use with postgraduate students is taken from a study skills handbook on postgraduate work, which says that the mother of postgraduate skills is critical thinking. And I really do think that is a valuable tool, in terms of theological education, helping those involved in ministry to think critically, and then as you learn to think critically about issues, again, to use the parlance of postgraduate education, it's about transferable skills. So it's in learning to think critically that you then have a toolbox. So you may not have studied the module on X, but when X comes up in the local church, you hopefully have some skills you've learned that you're able to take and apply to that particular scenario. And again, I think as you have said, the idea again that we're helping students really learn to communicate better. So again, when we come to postgraduate study, we do raise the bar a bit, in terms of undergraduate study, and again, just helping students to learn to write well, to communicate well. And again, hopefully they then are skills that will improve their work and their communication, either within the local church or whatever ministry context in which people find themselves involved. As I sometimes say, even to undergraduates, people will always forgive you for being clear. So the thing sometimes that people are left kind of scratching their heads, but again, that kind of clarity and communication, I think is a very valuable skill, and that's obviously, as you say, something that we're trying to develop through postgraduate work.
Talking about transferable skills, I think this was probably my experience as a student. I don't know if it was your experience, but I think postgraduate study also helps character formation. So I think masters and PhDs do not go to the most intelligent people. They go to the most determined people, or the people who are willing to persevere. And I think that idea of perseverance is a character trait that is formed in postgraduate study. And I think ultimately that helps the local church. Like you said, nobody's picking up postgraduate study because their calendar's empty, or very few people are doing that anyway. So they're cramming it into busy lifestyle already, and then you need to have that doggedness to work at it, to get it done, to complete it. And I think that shapes your character in terms of being able to see a goal quite a long way away, break down the steps to get there. And I think in ministry then, if you have people who are able to persevere, there's, I think this conversation's maybe dulled a little bit, but there a couple of years back, huge conversations about burnout in ministry, especially immediately after the pandemic. But I think postgraduate study, more than just a certificate, enables individuals to develop this kind of character of working at something in small chunks to achieve a larger goal, and that perseverance in ministry. That was certainly my experience, I think, doing both master's and doctorate work.
Again, I think, as I said previously, it does require discipline, and hopefully that is something, again, that people can kind of carry into wider life, that you need to be disciplined, in your studies, and therefore you need to be disciplined actually then in what you do in terms of ministry life. You need to be more purposeful. So one of the things we do with new postgraduate students is we give them a calendar for a week. Calendar's probably not a timetable for a week, completely blank, and we ask them to write out what they do morning, afternoon, and evening for a week, and then at the end of that, it's full. So we say, well, where are you going to fit in your postgraduate studies? So again, part of that is asking people, to think about what they're doing that is productive. What they're doing it is purposeful. Or are there things that, in reality, could probably go, maybe need to go. So again, I think just helping people develop that more disciplined way of organising their time is a very, very useful upshot of this. And yes, you're right. I mean, doggedness, is, I'm sure that's not the biblical word for it, but doggedness, I think is important. When I first mooted doctoral studies, my supervisor said, "Do you realise that over 75% of people who start off in a doctoral program give up?" So if you are going to see it through to the end, you do have to, you do have to kind of really stick at it. And again, when we're thinking about potential subjects for dissertations, or if it's a thesis, again, what's going to get you to stick at this, what really interests you, and again, just helping people, formulate ideas and questions, to encourage them to do stuff they'll be able to stick at and enjoy.
And that in turn benefits the local church, because you've got people who are thinking about how to be productive, how to be purposeful in what they do, how to set goals that maybe, I think in my blog post I wrote, you're setting goals that you're working towards little by little, day by day, year by year, moving almost imperceptibly slow, but you're at least moving in that direction. And that gives the local church a sense of purpose and direction, and when the difficulties come, you're able to weather those a little bit, because you're not aimlessly wandering. You know where you're heading for, and to have leaders who have that. And I think leadership books try to craft that, but real things form that in you and create that character in you.
Again, I think you're right. I think it is a bit more is done on the practice of it. Rather than, as you say, maybe in the theorizing of it, that we, as you do this work, well, then you're building a certain type of character, and the reality is, in most ministry, that is actually what you need. It's just kind of that doggedness, the ability to kind of stick at it, because I think most of us in our ministry experience in local church, you know, it is just a day by day, week by week kind of thing, without without kind of, you know, too many fireworks along the way. So you do want people who can kind of stick at things.
It's William Carey, isn't it? Who said, "I can
plod, yeah.
I can plod,
yeah.
Yes,
And yeah, we need plodders.
We need plodders, definitely. That's good. One more thing from me, and then I'll throw it back to you. I think this is an important. Talking about long-term goals, I think this is an important way postgraduate study serves the local church, and that is it develops future teachers. So I think about, you know, some of the criteria to be on faculty here at the Irish Baptist College or to be a visiting lecturer. It's not just that you have the ministry experience, which is necessary, but also you have the relevant academic qualifications, and that's necessary in this world that we live in as well. And if we want to have practitioners teaching and training pastors in the future, we need those practitioners to be gaining the relevant qualifications to enable them to be able to do that at a future stage. And I think that takes a lot of long-term thinking. You know, letting your pastor sacrifice a day a week to do some postgraduate study is actually one way in which you can ensure in 10 years from now there's someone who has 10 years ministry experience, relevant postgraduate qualifications to be able to come in and to teach and train and shape future generations of gospel workers. And I think it's interesting, you said at the beginning we need to recover this vision of pastor theologian, and I think in broadly evangelical circles we've kind of recoiled from that. I don't know if you can tell me if there's some historical reason for this, but 20th century kind of recoiling from this idea of professionalism of ministry and necessary qualifications, and I think that can hamper future development and training, especially in an institutionalized kind of way. Yeah.
Well, I say I do think there is kind of, for reasons that I'll not bore our listeners with, a very probably long and involved answer to you know why that kind of division has taken place. You know, kind of between the kind of the theological and the pastoral. But I think there probably is an increasing understanding, I think, of the need to combine those.
They need to be held together.
Yeah, they need to be held together. And again, I think even as you say, in terms of people teaching in this college, I mean, what our students do like is that ability to combine the kind of theological with the what people have experienced in practice, because ultimately at the end of the day, that's what we're about as a college. It is helping people in ministry. As you said at the start, it's not about having people sit in some ivory tower and think blessed thoughts,
or what they think are blessed thoughts.
So it is. So again, if we can have people who have gone through the process themselves, developed academically, are able to communicate their ideas better to students, but have also that anchored in the real world of ministry experience, well then I think that can only benefit our students. Another area in which I think there's benefit in this that we've discovered in the last couple of years is that some people who are involved in other ministry contexts outside the UK foresee a day because of the kind of changing mood in society where they're maybe involved in a ministry, say, in a local church, say in France, but they can foresee a day when someone from the government will come along and say, well, actually, what qualifications have you to do this? Okay. How are you qualified to do this? And they may be in a situation where, on paper, they have no particular qualifications to do that. Yeah. And what we're able to do, for example, in our postgraduate program, is to bring people here. Was it 18 days over 2 years? So they are able to kind of combine that with their ongoing ministry. But at the end of that, then they have something that in their context will mean something.
So recognizable.
Yes, when somebody comes along and says, well, what qualifications do you have to be to be a minister,
Yeah.
or have you just kind of set yourself up without any qualification, without any authority?
Yeah.
So again, that's another way I think in which postgraduate study can benefit, not necessarily the local church here, but in a wider context.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful actually, to think about that, and especially I suppose missionary and evangelistic endeavours in closed countries or difficult countries, or just environments that are more antagonistic to the gospel than we're maybe experiencing here.
Yeah, I'll say I think even in the West, there is kind of more focus on the religious community, and more suspicion of it. So again, if you can, in a sense, present your bona fides to some extent, that can actually help you in a more difficult context.
And helps the local church in that context, because they would lose a worker otherwise.
Yes, and again, it's for the student who's doing this, it's a benefit, in that term, but it's not simply a box ticking exercise, because they actually are benefiting from the study as well.
Yeah, great. Anything else? I've got one more thing.
Lead the way.
I also think postgraduate study benefits the local church in that it enables people to engage either in scholarship or to write at a more popular level as well. And I think this is one of the local church maybe doesn't see how this benefits them in the immediate future, but certainly further down the line, this is a benefit. If we just abandon all scholarship to those who are not orthodox in their theology, all that's going to filter down into popular material, and that creates an issue further down the line. So I think we need to be engaged in high-level scholarship. I think of places like Tyndale House, which is great, engaged in high-level scholarship that's respected, but it's all done from a conservative evangelical stance, and that's helpful and beneficial for the local church in the long term. But then also think about people who are writing, and all our favourite authors are people who have spent years studying in order to craft their theology, their understanding of the Bible, their understanding of culture, and even the craft of being able to write. And postgraduate study helps that. We were talking just this morning about how sometimes it's a challenge when students bounce up the 5,000 word limit and how to keep that coherent. And so if we want future authors, both in a popular and at an academic level, to be contributing well from an orthodox standpoint, we need to be helping them develop those skills, and postgraduate study is a key way in which those skills are developed. And then the church benefit because they have material that's been written for them from a mind that has thought about things in a sustained way.
Excuse me. I think you're right. We are involved in a lot of communication. Whether that's from the front or one-to-one or writing projects. So again, anything that kind of helps us in terms of our ability to communicate clearly, I think is very important. And also, I think, as you rightly say, we don't want to abandon the field.
No.
And I think, in a sense, this is what happened, I think, in the early 20th century, when theological liberalism took over. Evangelicals recoiled from that and largely abandoned the field. But
you couldn't help yourself with that
answer.
answer.
I couldn't, but I think, in the post-war world, I think evangelicals suddenly wakened up to that and saw the need, to recover scholarship again for the sake of the church. Because if evangelicals aren't contributing to scholarship, people are going to veer towards what's coming down the line from liberal theology, and again, that's obviously of no help to the church. So again, I don't think we want to abandon the field, but again, develop a culture, if you like, of kind of robust theological discipline, robust theological training, robust theological thinking. And again, the postgraduate world helps to contribute to that.
Yeah, good. Well, I think we've offered a fairly comprehensive answer to that. Whether it's the right answer, our listeners will judge.
I hope you're convinced.
Do you have anything else to add that we've not really touched on yet?
Not that I can think of. But I may circle back. I reserve the right to come back to something else that's popped into my head. So
yeah. Well, I think I can probably, in my mind, I think two umbrella terms that summarize everything that we've said is character and competency, and that in some way devoting yourself to postgraduate study benefits the local church, because in those individuals it develops both character and competency, which trickles down. It's a trickle down effect, isn't it?
Well, if you want another C, communication, but you may have that under the subheading of competency. And again, I think really, when we, in biblical terms, we think about leadership, those are the things that we're thinking about, isn't it? It's character and competency, and hopefully postgraduate study can help benefit people in both those areas.
Well, thank you, David, for your time. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. And if you have any thoughts on these questions, we'd love to hear them, so reach out to us. Until next time.